Yeah, that's a hard one. And there is always a bit of an inherent catch-22 in any profession really, but particularly in advertising, because you're so dependent on your portfolio. And it's that catch-22 of you might not have a very strong portfolio because you haven't worked with many clients, but until you work with clients, you can't get a good portfolio. So you can get stuck in that merry-go-round. I think the main thing for me is I think passion counts for a lot, without sounding too sort of wishy-washy about it. I think if you can show that, you genuinely are interested in, this really is what you want to do, this isn't just some sort of pipe dream, that counts for a lot. I think people do respond to that. But then on a more practical level, if I talk about portfolio for a second, there are ways of getting a portfolio together. I think generally speaking, any kind of client, they're coming to you with a problem. They want more sales, they want more awareness, whatever it is. They're coming to you with a problem of some kind. What they sort of want to know is that you're not going to give them more problems. You just need to show them that you can answer those problems. You can solve those problems for them. And so any work you can show them that's relevant in any way, and it can be anything. It can be blogs. I've shared work in my early days with clients from video games magazines, and it had nothing to do with what they were doing. But they can see something in that. One of the stories I tell probably too often is when I was at an agency called Lowy Group, which I don't think exists anymore. And I was trying to get out of there because I didn't like it very much. I went to a guy called Liam Morgan at a recruiter called Cogs Agency. Some of you may have heard of Cogs. And he said a really interesting thing to me. He said, you would be amazed the amount of creative directors who tell me their copywriters can't write. And he said, what I mean by that is they can write a headline, they can write a social post, but if you ask them to structure anything of any length, if you ask them to do sort of, proper writing, as it were, he said a lot of them can't do it, and the creative directors get really frustrated. And he said, look, I can see from all your magazine writing, you can write, you have that skill. And so you can take that skill and sort of adapt it to copywriting. So I think when you're trying to convince a client that they should work with you, I think if you can show them something that's relevant, it doesn't have to be the exact thing they're asking for. If you've got that, then fantastic. But if you can show them something, and there are many skills that are transferable. A lot of what's going on in the industry at the moment, people will say, you need to be a UX writer, you need to be a social writer, you need to be this kind of writer. And I get why that happens, but at the same time, I'm a big believer in if you've got a good writer and they can actually write, you can learn that other stuff. Those things do all have their idiosyncrasies, of course, but you can learn that. If you've got a writer who can, as Liam said all those years ago, if you've got a copywriter who can't really write, that's a much bigger problem. So I think if you can find that, again, that kind of core of the skill that the client's asking for and say, look, I know you need a writer who's got medical experience in the UX field, for example. I don't have that, but here's what I do have, which shows that I can understand a field, I can understand a vertical, then I think they'll respond to that. The sad truth is they won't all. A lot of them will just say, no, I want this specific writer. So then if you really need to get specific experience, whether it's a case of going to agencies or whoever and just sort of doing whatever you can to get in through the front door,